You guys know why Wonder Woman won't date Mr. Freeze? He gave her the cold shoulder. I'm just gonna do the video now. I'm sorry. The real-world origin of Princess Diana of Themyscira is a little more eyebrow-raising than you might imagine for a Golden Age superhero. Wonder Woman was co-created in 1941 by William Moulton Marston and his wife Elizabeth. Marston was already well known for helping develop the polygraph, creating an apparatus that measured systolic blood pressure to test honesty, something that we know doesn't actually work now, but it's very likely that this invention played some part in inspiring Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. Marston's home life provided some other interesting inspiration for Wonder Woman. He and his wife Elizabeth regularly engaged in polyamory and BDSM behaviors that were particularly taboo in the 1940s. Wonder Woman was based in part on their polyamorous girlfriend Olive Bryne. The distinctive bracelets she often wore would become a part of Diana's iconic costume. Wonder Woman was a founding member of the Justice League and first appeared in All-Star Comics number 8 in December of 1941, but you guys didn't come here for terrible jokes and origin stories, so here's my list of the top 5 evil versions of Wonder Woman. Number 5. Red Sun Wonder Woman. Mark Millar's 2003 miniseries Superman Red Sun was based in an alternate world where Kal-El landed in Soviet Russia and as a result was raised with communist values. Some of you may recall this book from my top 5 evil Supermen video, so let me say again that I'm very much aware that communists aren't automatically evil. However, while Red Sun Superman was more misguided than evil, he did do some pretty evil things. As dictator of the Soviet Union and later most of the world, his rule was so awful that he had to drug the water supply to prevent his own subjects from killing themselves. Frankly, there were no true good guys in Superman Red Sun, at least not in the traditional Blue Boy Scout sense. In much the same way that Red Sun took Superman as a beacon for freedom and flipped it on its head, so too did it take Wonder Woman and do the same. The Wonder Woman depicted in Red Sun was unfazed by the fact that the Man of Steel was a dictator, and when she finally turned against him, it was because he put himself and his fight with Batman before her safety by begging her to break the lasso of truth, crippling her in the process. She didn't have a problem with Superman's actions or his ethics, only his treatment of her in particular. Put frankly, she was complicit in his actions and would have happily continued to be complicit. Red Sun at its core is about whether or not the ends justify the means. Lex Luthor clearly believes that they do from the very start. Superman takes longer to come around, but eventually comes to think the same thing. I'm not going to give away the ending, but let's just say that whether or not the ends truly do justify the means is left intentionally vague. In the end, this Wonder Woman is guilty of helping to prop up a dictator that eventually became ruthless and then taking her entire country to war just to get revenge on that one man. And for that, she makes the list at number 5. Number 4. Superwoman from the Crime Syndicate. Superwoman from Earth-3 was named Lois Lane, but make no mistake about it, she was an alternate version of Wonder Woman. An Amazonian by birth, she even had her own version of the lasso of truth, although her version was the lasso of enslavement, so yeah, comics were never really about subtlety, were they? This original Crime Syndicate of America was created by Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky in Justice League of America number 29 in 1964, but the latest version came about during the New 52 with Wonder Woman making her first appearance in Justice League number 23 in October of 2013. This Superwoman from the Antimatter universe was pregnant with Ultraman's baby, or so she claimed, but she also told Owlman the baby was his. Manipulating both men, she tried to turn them against each other. As it turned out, the baby didn't belong to either of them. Who did it belong to? Well, who do I look like, Maury Povich? Tough crowd. The baby actually belonged to a prisoner of the syndicate, Alexandra Luthor. As it turned out, she had manipulated her comrades into bringing him with them as a prisoner. She's not just evil, she's soap opera evil. Number 3. Brunhilde from Earth-10. Brunhilde was one of the Valkyries of Norse mythology and a member of the JL Axis, an alternate version of the Justice League from Earth-10, where Germany won World War II and took over the planet, thanks in no small part to her involvement. Earth 10 was based on Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23 from 1990, which featured an alternate version of Superman that was a Nazi. When the New 52 came along in 2011, Morrison got the chance to expand upon this idea, and thus the JL Axis, including this Nazi version of Wonder Woman, was created. So yeah, Nazi Wonder Woman is an evil, ignorant racist who assisted in ethnic cleansing on a global scale. This one isn't much fun. Let's just move on. Number 2, Flashpoint Wonder Woman. 2011's Flashpoint was a story arc that saw Barry Allen wake up in a world where he's not the Flash. However, the differences didn't end there. His mother was alive and his father had died of a heart attack but never went to prison. On top of that, there was no Justice League and, seemingly, no Superman. In this timeline, Diana, Queen of Themyscira, was leading the Amazonians in a war with Aquaman's forces in Europe. Wonder Woman had conquered the United Kingdom and renamed it New Themyscira, while the Atlanteans sank the rest of Western Europe. That's right, Wonder Woman as a warlord. I wanted to include this one for a couple of reasons. One, it's one of the few evil versions of Wonder Woman that exist without an evil version of Superman. And two, it's just a great story arc. Flashpoint consists of a core limited series and a number of tie-in books, and it's worth your time. Number 1, Injustice Wonder Woman. And I find myself in a position of saying once again, was there ever any doubt in your mind about this one? Whether this version of Wonder Woman is the most evil is debatable, but much like Superman, I feel that this series deserves the number 1 spot on the list just because it's that good. As a matter of fact, I think Tom Taylor is probably getting sick of me tweeting at him about it all the time. So 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us was a fighting game, but there was also a comic series, a prequel that spans the 5 years before the events of the game. It takes place in an alternate reality where Superman controls the world as a dictator. A quick recap, Superman grabbed who he thought was Doomsday and flew into space, but it was Lois Lane who was pregnant with his unborn child. The Joker had drugged Superman, he'd been hallucinating. However, that's not where the heartbreak stops. The Joker had set up a nuclear warhead in Metropolis and somehow wired it to Lois's heartbeat. When her heart stopped, so did the city of Metropolis. Superman lost the love of his life, his child, his city, and nearly everyone he knew, all in one fatal day, and it sent him down a dark path. In a fury, he murdered the Joker and blamed Batman. Batman had caught these lunatic Gotham criminals over and over. Every time they escaped, he locked them back up in the same place. From Superman's point of view, it was all a game for Batman. The Joker once said, "All it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy." Superman had his one bad day, and it made him into a dystopian dictator. As a result, Batman and the rest of the world had quite a few bad days as well. But every step that he took on that path, Wonder Woman was there with him, encouraging him to move on, to go farther, to do what needed to be done. Now don't get me wrong here, Wonder Woman didn't agree with every single thing that Superman did. She especially had a problem with the way he aligned himself with supervillains in order to beat Batman and his resistance, but she was definitely not a good influence on the Man of Steel. And if anyone in the regime is just as guilty as Superman, then it's Wonder Woman. At the time of this writing, the most recent issue of Injustice 2 was Chapter 51, which was released on March 27th of 2018. So now is the perfect time to get caught up with this critically acclaimed series. Hey guys, once again, I'm Jay, and this time I'm here to share my list of 5 Evil Batmen. Now let's get this intro out of the way quickly so that we can bring on the Batman. The world's greatest detective debuted in Detective Comics number 27 in 1939. Batman was created by artist Bob Kane and writer Bill Finger, and he was said to have been influenced by Sherlock Holmes, Zorro, The Shadow, and sketches by Leonardo da Vinci. The question of whether or not Batman goes too far or not far enough is the subject of great debate, but let's take a look at a few versions of Batman that definitely went too far. Number 5, The Bruce. I, Joker is an Elseworld story that takes place in a distant alternate future. In this reality, Batman, or the Bruce as he's called in the story, is a title that's passed down from one person to the next. Thing is, Batman is the leader of a cult that rules the world. The cult's preacher is known as the Gordon, because of course he is, and everyone who opposes the Bat cult is captured, brainwashed, surgically altered into a member of Batman's rogues gallery, and then ritualistically murdered. Every year, the Bruce goes after them, and the cult cheers him on as he tracks down and murders each one. Of course, I'm not going to give away the ending, but the comic is told from the perspective of Joseph Collins, who's been captured and turned into the Joker. It's a wild ride, you guys. Number 4, Leatherwing. There have been at least 2 versions of Batman called Leatherwing, of which I'm aware. There's this guy who first appeared in 1994's Detective Comics Annual number 7 and is also a pirate because, why not? And then there's this guy who first appeared in 2007's Countdown to Adventure number 2 and is also a Nazi. Clearly, the latter is the evil Batman we're featuring on this list. Earth 10 is a world in which Germany won World War II. As a result, everyone is separated based on their genetics. Those deemed inferior are killed, and the remaining used to breed. It's dark, depressing stuff for sure. Leatherwing, along with other DC counterparts, including Overman, who I mentioned in my 5 Evil Supermen video, are appointed by Hitler to be his heroes, and they form the JL Axis. They're opposed by a group called the Freedom Fighters, led by a hero calling himself Uncle Sam. Number 3, Asbats. I wanted most of the entries on this list to be actual alternate versions of Bruce Wayne. I don't mind using the occasional second-generation hero or clone. I mean, I did pick Webman in my Evil Spider-Man video. So the next couple of entries are not really Bruce Wayne, but they're still worthy. Asbats is a portmanteau of the names Azrael and Batman. John Paul Valley, going by the name Azrael, was an assassin in the Order of Dumas. Batman attempted to rehabilitate Azrael and even went so far as to appoint him as the new Batman, while Bruce Wayne recovered from a Bane-inflicted broken back. However, old habits die hard, and this new Batman began to murder criminals, an activity Mr. Wayne certainly did not approve of. Well, he kinda just allowed them to die, but nevertheless, Batman returned to active duty, defeated Azrael, and the status quo was restored. Number 2, Black Lantern Batman.
The blackest night falls from the skies, the darkness grows as all light dies. We crave your hearts and your demise, by my black hand the dead shall rise.
That little ray of sunshine is, of course, the oath of the Black Lantern Corps. Led by the Lord of the Unliving Necron, the Black Lanterns are basically reanimated bodies. From the unknown depths of Sector 666, the Black Lantern rings descend upon entire worlds and claim the dead. I'd say that you can't make this stuff up, but clearly someone did. So, what happens when a Black Lantern ring finds its way onto the corpse of the Batman? Nothing good, that's for sure. Necron used the Justice League's emotional connection to Batman against them, and thus, this happened. Now, it was later revealed that this body was a clone, but still, it's Black Lantern Batman. It's so awesome. Check out Blackest Night. It's only 3 issues, and it's really fun, and also dark. Number 1, The Dark Knights. So this time, we're going out with a bang. Rather than end with the most evil Batman I could find, we're ending with a whole team of evil Batmen from the Dark Universe. As we've discussed many times, the Dark Knights were formed when an alternate version of Bruce Wayne, known as the Batman Who Laughs, was given the task of finding other evil versions of Batman by Barbados. They made their way to Earth Prime with some unwitting help from the Court of Owls, who were killed for their trouble, and Barbados drained the life force from Superman and Wonder Woman, leaving them incapacitated. You guys, I had so much fun with this one. I had never read Dark Knight's Metal, and so I had never read any of the tie-ins that introduced these alternate versions of Batman. I read all 7 tie-ins and all of Dark Knight's Metal at once. This was for the original version of this video on Comicstorian. But even that wasn't enough, right? So I looked up a reading list and tracked down every related issue from any book that I could find, and I ended up making not only the original version of this video for Comicstorian, variant, but also an individual video for each of the 7 Dark Knights. And the funny part is, all I needed for the sake of the video were the 7 tie-ins that tell the origin stories. But my obsession with Batman aside, let's run down 7 Evil Batmen for the price of 1, and if you're still interested, you'll find a card in the upper right-hand corner leading to the 7 Dark Knight videos that I made for the Into the Omniverse series. So here they are, in a mostly random order. I did put the leader of the group first. The Batman Who Laughs was a Jokerized version of Batman from Earth -22. As previously stated, he was the leader of the Dark Knights. His goal was to help his master Barbados plunge the multiverse into darkness. Like all the Dark Knights, he came from a universe within the Dark Multiverse, which has been described as a shadow under the primary multiverse. A malformed world of nightmare where every fear and every bad decision plays out. Joker and his goons killed Batman's entire rogues gallery, used some sort of chemical to dissolve Commissioner Gordon, blew up buildings all around the city, including hospitals, and infected a bunch of children with the Joker toxin after killing their parents. Batman broke his one rule and killed the Joker. However, he later told Superman that even though he had to take out Joker, he refused to slide down the slippery slope. He would not become a monster like Joker wanted. Sadly for Batman, when he killed the Clown Prince of Crime, he was exposed to a new strain of Joker toxin, and it rewrote his mind to become more like that of the Joker, causing him to first kill the entire Bat family, then the Justice League, and eventually the entire world. Moving on to the Devastator, we find Earth -1, where Superman lost his mind for some unknown reason. The Blue Boy Scout murdered Lois Lane and went on a rampage, just slaughtering people indiscriminately. Batman, unable to find a way to return Superman to sanity, tried to take him down with a kryptonite-tipped spear. Superman taunted Batman, describing his disappointment in Batman's attempt to fight him, but the spear was just a distraction. Batman injected himself with a modified version of the Doomsday virus and transformed into an amalgam of Doomsday and Batman, and then easily killed the Man of Steel. Unfortunately, in his desperation, the Dark Knight had caused the virus to spread to everyone, turning them all into mindless monsters. Next up, we have Earth -11 and Bryce Wayne. Now, Earth 11 in the normal DC multiverse is a gender-swapped alternate version of Earth Prime. Earth -11 is a dark version of that universe, as is the case with all Dark Universe worlds. Bryce Wayne's love interest was called Sylvester Kyle, see what they did there? And after Kyle was murdered by a group of rogue metahumans, Batwoman went on an 18-month killing spree, taking out every single metahuman on the face of the Earth. Aquawoman and the Atlanteans eventually came to the surface to talk peace with the surface world, but Batwoman was suspicious. When the peace talks break down, she's proven correct, and in a totally logical and necessary move, she surgically alters her own physiology and genetics to better combat the Atlanteans. Batwoman takes over Atlantis and submerges the entire Earth underwater. That brings us to Earth -52. In this universe, Batman lost many different Robins over the course of his career and became obsessed with bringing them back. Batman uses the weapons of Mirror Master, Captain Cold, and other villains to capture the Flash and chain him to the Batmobile, which he had modified using the blueprints for the Cosmic Treadmill. Batman drove directly into the Speed Force itself, and as a result, the two heroes were fused together. Batman gained a corrupt connection to the Speed Force, while Flash became a second consciousness inside his head. I'm sure you've guessed what happened next. The Caped Crusader uses his powers to go on a killing spree, eliminating his entire rogues gallery. Then we have Earth -44 and the Murder Machine. In this universe, a group of supervillains led by Bane broke into the Batcave and murdered Alfred Pennyworth. Bruce Wayne was distraught, and while gathering with the Justice League to mourn Alfred's death, he asked Cyborg for help. Bruce had created a digital copy of Alfred's consciousness that he hoped to fashion into an artificial intelligence. He called this the Alfred Protocol. Cyborg agreed to help, but the AI version of Alfred soon began to act very hostile toward anyone except Batman. When the Alfred Protocol began killing Batman's enemies, Cyborg wanted to destroy it, but Batman, unwilling to lose Alfred again, refused and decided to try and reason with the new AI. Unfortunately, Alfred Alfred merged with the Batman and in the process took away all his fears and along with it, his humanity. Batman, in his new evil Tony Stark persona, slaughtered all the remaining criminals and the Justice League without a shred of remorse. And since this is likely the longest number 1 on any list I've ever done, we'll move right along to the Merciless from Earth -12. This was a dark version of Earth 12 where Batman and Wonder Woman were together. The God of War created a helmet that amplified his powers, and Batman and Wonder Woman vowed to defeat Ares and destroy his helmet. After 2 years of war, they finally confronted Ares, who killed Wonder Woman, leading Batman to put on the helmet in a desperate attempt to make him pay for her death. After using his powers to kill Ares, Batman saw that Wonder Woman wasn't dead, but when she tried to remove the helmet, he killed her rather than give up its power. And of course, he went on a killing spree, murdering all the criminals and heroes who tried to stop him. Last but not least, we have Earth -32, where Bruce Wayne, after witnessing the death of his parents in a dark alleyway, is found by a Green Lantern ring. Things go bad quickly, as Wayne's willpower is too much for even the ring to handle, and he forces it to obey an order to kill his parents' murderer. For a moment, it even looks like he can command the ring to bring his parents back, but it only manages to reanimate them for a moment. He then proceeded to go on a murderous rampage, shocking, I know, and kills a string of villains before being confronted by Jim Gordon. This confrontation does not go well for the Commissioner. After the Green Lantern Corps arrives, Bruce makes pretty quick work of them as well. All of these comics end the same way, with the dark universe they take place in beginning to crumble away as the Batman Who Laughs appears to ask that incarnation of Bruce Wayne to join the Dark Knights. That is, except for the Batman Who Laughs. His story continues in Dark Knight's Metal number 4. I highly recommend reading these 7 tie-ins along with Dark Knight's Metal and checking out my Dark Knights playlist. I imagine there's a card and a link in the description, unless we forgot, in which case there isn't. Okay guys, this has been the most fun I have ever had making one of these videos, and I hope it shows. Thank you to every single one of you who suggested it. This top 5 list actually had 11 entries because apparently I don't math, but there are still other evil Batmen out there. Jump down to the comments section and let me know which evil alternate Batman I should have included. I want you guys to tell me about the most obscure evil Batman that you can find, and I'll be in the comments section to check it out. So, Superman needs no introduction. The Man of Steel has been around for more than 85 years, and his story has been told and retold countless times in every format imaginable. However, back in 1938, no one had ever heard of Superman. National Publications, which would later become DC Comics, was desperately searching for features to publish in its new anthology series called Action Comics. Meanwhile, 2 high school friends from Cleveland named Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster had been pitching their idea for a comic strip called Superman to different publications and had been turned down a lot. So, 13 pages and $130 later, the deal was done, and Superman was the lead story in Action Comics number 1. Spoiler alert, they managed to sell a few. So, we all know that Superman fights for truth and justice, but what if he didn't? That's an idea that DC Comics has explored quite a few times. I'm Jay from Fancy Teeth, and some of you may remember me from such comicstorian videos as 5 Truly Evil Hulks. To my surprise, that video did pretty well, and I really enjoyed making it. So I'm back to bring you my list of the top 5 evil versions of Superman. Number 5. Superman Red Sun. What if Superman didn't fight for the American way? What if he instead fought for the Russian way? This was the central conceit behind Mark Millar's 2003 miniseries Superman Red Sun, which gave us a glimpse into an alternate world where Kal-El landed in Soviet Russia and, as a result, was raised with communist values. Now, I may have grown up in Cold War America, bombarded by anti-communist propaganda, but I still know that all communists can't be automatically evil, and this version of Superman wasn't evil either, at first anyway. He even flew over to Metropolis and saved the city when Russia's Sputnik 2 crashed into the United States. Kal-El thrived in Stalin's Russia and eventually became dictator of the Soviet Union after the leader's death, and later ruled most of the world, even going so far as to dictate the specific areas where new children would be born. Superman as a dictator. Put a pin in that, because it's an idea that we'll come back to again. Taking the idea of Superman as a beacon of freedom and flipping flipping it on its head leads to some intriguing explorations of the Man from Krypton. In addition to that, Red Sun turns a few other DC staples on their head. Batman is an anti-Soviet vigilante, while Lex Luthor becomes the President of the United States. So, was this Superman truly evil? I would say no, he was just misguided, but he did do some pretty evil things though. Still, this story is way too interesting to be left off the list. I won't spoil the ending, but it's one of my favorite Superman stories and I highly recommend it. Number 4. Ultraman. Created by Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky, Ultraman was introduced in Justice League of America number 29 in 1964 as a Kryptonian from an alternate universe. During his voyage to Earth, he encountered some kryptonite, but unlike Superman, it didn't make Ultraman weaker. Instead, it increased his strength and continued to do so every time he was exposed to it. Ultraman was depicted as power-hungry, brutal, and without remorse. He founded the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil version of the Justice League, and conquered all of Earth. After discovering the home universe of Superman, the Crime Syndicate traveled there in an attempt to conquer it, where they were foiled by the Justice League. There have been many versions of Ultraman and the Crime Syndicate of America over the years. One of my personal favorites comes in the form of a New 52-era story arc entitled Forever Evil. Just, what a great title. It sounds like a jewelry store for supervillains. Let the homicidal maniac in your life know how much they mean to you with Forever Evil. Remember, it's not evil unless it's forever evil. The story begins when the multiverse barrier is weakened during Apocalypse War. The Crime Syndicate travels from its home on Earth 3 to do what villains do and take over the world. Forever Evil is worth your time. Number 3. Darkseid Superman. A lot of these stories are based on the idea that had Superman landed somewhere besides Smallville, things would have played out very differently. So, what would happen if he didn't land on Earth at all? In John Francis Moore's Superman The Dark Side, Kal-El landed on Apokolips and was raised by Darkseid. Again, this Superman isn't necessarily evil, but he does do some very evil things as a pawn of Darkseid. Superman helps destroy New Genesis, but in the end turns on Darkseid and uses the power of Earth's yellow sun to defeat him. The story was first released in 1998, and Darkseid Superman's armor, which somehow gives him power via geothermal energy, is one of the most 1990s looking things that you will ever see. Number 2. Overman. The original version of Overman came about in Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23 in 1990. Overman was the result of government experiments, and the other heroes on this version of Earth were all modified clones made from Overman's cells. Unfortunately, he contracts some sort of sexually transmitted disease, and it causes him to go insane. So yeah, that was a thing that happened. Overman murdered everyone on this version of Earth and then decided to commit suicide by setting off a doomsday bomb. All this was presented in the form of the Psycho Pirate's memories as he brought back characters who were killed off in the crisis. He tries not to bring Overman back, but can't make himself stop thinking about him. Overman is brought back, but ultimately defeated in a display of disregard for the fourth wall that puts Deadpool to shame. The other version of Overman, also created by Morrison, has a lot in common with the Superman depicted in Red Sun. He too was from an alternate universe, but instead of landing in Soviet Russia, this time Baby Kal-El landed in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. So Red Sun was about a communist Superman, while Overman was about a Nazi Superman. Kal-El is discovered by the Nazis and raised by Hitler himself. Hitler, inspired by a Superman comic book, oddly enough, renamed him Overman and used him to win the war and take over the world. There's not much to say about this one, except that it's really depressing. Moving on. Number 1. Injustice Superbad. Was there ever any doubt in your mind about this one? Whether this version of Superman is the most evil is debatable, but I still feel like this series deserves the number 1 spot on the list. It's just that good. Not only was 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us a great video game, it was also a fantastic comic series. A prequel spanning the 5 years before the events of the game, this is my favorite alternate Superman series and my favorite complete story from Comicstorian. This story begins in an alternate universe, big surprise there, where the Joker tricks Superman into killing Lois Lane. Spoiler, he didn't take it well. If you've ever wondered what would happen if you mixed Mortal Kombat and DC Comics, well, now you know. It's called Injustice. And with the 2017 run of Injustice 2 completed, it's the perfect time to get caught up on this wild ride. #not sponsored.
Now, please, stop me if you've heard this one before. It was August of the groovy year of 1962 when the world first met Peter Parker. He was a classic nerd right down to the glasses and the excellent grades. Bitten by a radioactive spider, Parker sets out to use his powers to become an underpaid regional pro wrestler, you know, the American dream, and after his negligence leaves him guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the death of dear old Uncle Ben, don't at me, he decides that responsibility is super neato, man. This story, first told in issue number 15 of Amazing Fantasy, was the brainchild of comic book royalty. Written by God of the Marvel Universe Stan Lee and penciled by Jack Kirby and inked by Steve Ditko, both legendary in their own right, the story of Spider-Man struck a chord with the public. At the time, young people in comics were sidekicks, added to give the reader someone to relate to. But Spider-Man broke that mold. Peter Parker was the hero. It seems like a simple idea now, but this was pretty revolutionary at the time, and it helped propel the story of Peter Parker into the mainstream consciousness. Hey guys, once again, I'm Jay, and I'm here to satisfy an obsession with evil counterparts that began the first time I saw Leonard Nimoy in a fake goatee. I'm back again to bring you my list of the top 5 evil versions of Spider-Man. Number 5. Webman. In August of 1977, the world was introduced to Webman. A twin of Spider-Man created by Dr. Doom, Webman was said to have all of Spidey's powers, but none of his goodness. How do I know he was evil? Well, because Dr. Doom says so, of course. Now, this one is super obscure, but lots of fun. The story begins with Spider-Man on patrol when his spider sense tells him that there's some sort of trouble going on in a nearby building. He busts through the window and yells, "All right, nobody move!" only to find an empty room with a mirror on the wall. Spidey slowly approaches the mirror and remarks that he could use a shave, even though he's wearing a mask and can't see his own face. I don't know, you guys, I didn't write it. Spidey steps to the mirror to find Dr. Doom, who begins to monologue about his twin machine. I guess he couldn't think of the word clone. Maybe it was like on the tip of his tongue or something. He announces that he's about to create Webman, and Spider-Man just kind of watches while he flicks the switch and goes on about how evil he'll be. Doom informs Webman that it's his job to destroy Spider-Man, to which he agrees for some reason. And Webman leaves the building looking for Spidey, who apparently left while all the monologuing was going on. I can't blame him for that. Lucky for our hero, his evil twin is the opposite of himself in every way. Peter Parker has always been brilliant, his evil twin, not so much. They fight it out and eventually end up back in the same building where Doom uses the opportunity to make a second evil twin. The weirdest part of this story is how it ends. Spider-Man just runs past his two evil twins, quipping that it's not fair to gang up on him, tells Doom that they can't help him anymore, webs him up, and says he's going to jail. Nothing is explained. What happens to the clones? Do they fight Spidey on the way back out? Do the clones go to jail? Do they get back out and lead normal lives after that? Are there two exact clones of Peter Parker just hanging around New York working menial jobs? Why did they appear in costume, complete with alternate color scheme? Why didn't Doom look under the mask of a Spider-Man clone that he controlled? No answers here. It's all just left up in the air. It's just so weird. And I kinda love it. Number 4, Spider-Man Last Stand. Coming in at number 4 on the list, we have Peter Parker from Earth 312-500, or 312-500. There's no good way to say that. This version of Spidey first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 58 as an alternate future for the well-known web crawler of Earth 616. 616. Short, easy to remember, rolls off the tongue. That's how you name a reality. Anyway, the story begins in issue 57 with Happy Birthday Part 1 of 3, when main continuity Parker is caught in the middle of an attack from Dormammu and his minions. Dr. Strange tells all the heroes to stay back and fight off the minions while leaving Dormammu to him. Unfortunately for Spidey, he was the only one who didn't listen. As a result of his attempts to help, Spider-Man and Dr. Strange end up trapped outside of time and space. When they return, they find themselves in a possible future where Dormammu has killed all the heroes. This leads to a neat scene where Parker discusses the concept of Schrodinger's cat with Dr. Strange. That alone makes this little 3-issue arc worth a read. So when Spider-Man runs off to try and save alternate future MJ, because of course he does, he ends up finding an alternate version of himself. The alternate future Peter is standing over Aunt May's grave in the rain, going on about how this is his last stand. As he talks to Aunt May, he calmly puts on his costume, a leather jacket version of the normal Spidey outfit. You see, this version of Peter Parker killed Kraven the Hunter, and this made drastic murdery changes to his timeline, creating a darker and much more deadly anti-hero version of Spidey. He steps away from the grave toward the NYPD and refuses to surrender, basically committing suicide by cop. Man, these evil alternate videos are super depressing. Number 3, Zombie Spider-Man. Zombies are popular. Like, really popular. And in 2005, Marvel brought in Walking Dead writer and co-creator Robert Kirkman to capitalize on this cultural craze with a 5-issue miniseries called Marvel Zombies. It's set on alternate Earth 2149, where a virus turned the world's superheroes into flesh-eating zombies and has since expanded to include well over a dozen sequels, one-shots, and spin-offs. Now, when I did the top 5 Evil Hulks video, the problem was that there were too many Evil Hulks to choose from, and I ended up leaving out Maestro, much to the disapproval of the comments section. Click like or leave a comment on this web zone if you want to see Evil Hulks Part 2. When it comes to Spidey, it's the opposite problem. Evil Spider-Men are hard to come by. Case in point, Zombie Spidey devoured both Aunt May and Mary Jane Watson and still somehow kept enough sanity to know that what he did was wrong and eventually turned back into a hero. In any case, he did some truly horrible things, and that puts him on the list. On a related note, Marvel's Zombies is disturbing, but in a good way, and it's one of my must-reads. Number 2, The Spider. This version of Peter Parker hailed from Earth 15, a mass-murdering sociopath who merged with the Carnage symbiote. This version of Spidey has all the violent tendencies of Zombie Spider-Man with none of the regret. Also, to be fair, less flesh-eating. The Exiles were a team assembled from different alternate realities, and in 2002's Exiles number 12, the Spider was brought in to replace Daredevil. This Parker had a Deadpool-style personality, which was a tad redundant as the team featured a version of Deadpool at the time, and he had the same powers as the 616 version of Spidey, but with the added benefit of the Carnage symbiote. This, of course, gave him a weakness when it came to very loud noises and extreme temperatures. Said to have been sentenced to 67 life sentences in his home reality, there really was very little to redeem this version of Parker. Zombie Spider-Man killed way more people, like way more, but at least he did feel regret. The Spider may have killed less people, but he was far more evil. Number 1, Patton Parnell. I'm going out on a limb here and guess that many of you expected me to say Superior Spider-Man. Well, Dr. Otto Octavius was a bad guy, but after taking over Peter's body, Spidey's memories drove him to become a hero. If this were a list of my favorite alternate versions of Spider-Man, then Superior Spider-Man would fit right in. But it's not. And he wasn't evil, at least not while he was Spider-Man. Our real number 1 may not have the universe-wide body count of Zombie Spider-Man, but the sheer horror factor in this one is astounding. In 2004's Edge of the Spider-Verse, we saw a lot of alternate versions of Spider-Man, but none of them haunted my dreams in quite the same way as Patton Parnell of Earth 51412. Parnell was a creepy stalker bitten by a spider while at Allcorp Industries, but he didn't become anyone's friendly neighborhood anything. Instead, he began to web up people and eat them in the same way that spiders catch and eat insects. He was killed by Moreland, but not until after he'd bitten Sarah Jane, his universe's MJ. And the next day, thousands of baby spiders started running out of the wound on her neck. And so there we are. We've combined the indiscriminate people-eating of Zombie Spider-Man with the cold, emotionless attitude toward murder of the spider, and fit it all into a literal monster that procreates by biting people, causing the baby spider monsters to sprout from the victim's flesh. And that little shop of horrors is why Patton Parnell takes the number 1 spot. Oh, God. This video is brought to you in part by our wonderful patrons on Patreon. For a couple of bucks a month, you can get a credit in every video, chat with me directly, or even get a video made on a topic of your choice. Just go to patreon.com/fancyteeth. Okay, guys, Whew, this Evil Alternates video has really, truly creeped me out. I did not want to revisit that particular part of Edge of the Spider-Verse. Truth be told, I'm not fond of spiders, so I hope you guys appreciate the effort. Jump down to the comments section and let me know which alternate Spider-Man I should have included. You guys always come up with great additions to the list, and I'm genuinely curious to see what you come up with this time. Deadpool, star of his very own video game, 2 feature-length films with another in the works, and a countless number of comics. Like, seriously, I tried to count them for this script, but the Kentucky educational system did not prepare me to count that high. Mr. Wade Winston Wilson was created by devoted lover of large pectoral muscles artist Rob Liefeld, along with writer Fabian Nicieza. And to quote myself from another video, because laziness, this red suit-wearing, disfigured, mentally unstable mercenary has an accelerated healing factor, surviving total incineration and decapitation more than once. He's known as the Merc with the Mouth because he literally never shuts up, except that one time in the other movie where he didn't have a mouth. It's not plagiarism if you steal from yourself, right? Anyway, here are my top 5 evil versions of Deadpool. Number 5, Apocalypse Deadpool. In this alternate timeline, Apocalypse returned in the early part of the 21st century. Earth was utterly destroyed, and what remained became Omega World, a large structure made of bubble-like domes, each with its own world inside. Apocalypse assembled a new team of horsemen, including Man-Thing, the Venom symbiote, Moon Knight, and, of course, Deadpool. They were tasked with removing all threats to Apocalypse from Omega World. Beginning in 2016's Extraordinary X-Men number 8, Colossus and his team of young X-Men ended up trapped in Omega World after a battle with Sugar Man, who looks neither sweet nor like a man. Colossus became separated from the group when they encountered Deadpool and the other horsemen, and the young X-Men wandered the different bubbles that make up Omega World, looking for a way to contact the X-Men in their time while protecting the Ark they took from Sugar Man, a collection of 600 mutant embryos within a small device. So this is a 2016 storyline that many of you may want to read for yourselves, so I won't go into too much more detail. This version of Deadpool, however, is pretty awesome. He seems to maintain all the powers Deadpool is known for, plus some more that were bestowed upon him by Apocalypse, and his costume redesign is fantastic. Number 4, Evil Deadpool. Of course this guy makes the list, right? You can't have 5 evil Deadpools without including the guy named Evil Deadpool. First appearing in Deadpool number 44 in 2011, Evil Deadpool is made of various pieces of the original Deadpool. Ella Whitby was a British psychologist that developed an obsession with Deadpool. She collected various body parts that Deadpool and Dreadpool lost and regrew, and she stored them in a freezer. Yeah, that's totally normal. That's not creepy at all. Deadpool was rightfully disgusted and threw the body parts into a dumpster. However, after they thawed out, Deadpool's healing factor caused them to form together into an evil version of Deadpool with 2 right lower arms. Evil Deadpool eventually joined the Evil Deadpool Corps, which we'll talk about in a bit, but after the events of Deadpool Kills Deadpool, Evil Deadpool and our normal Earth 616 Deadpool were the only 2 Deadpools left standing. 616 Deadpool, however, was totally unaware of this. Wonder how many times I'll say Deadpool in this video. Evil Deadpool's costume is made up of pieces of different costumes that Wade has worn over the years, implying that it's made up of whatever pieces of costume that were cut off with each body part. This is because Evil Deadpool is based on the Ship of Theseus paradox, which I discussed in my last Star Trek video. Hint, hint, subscribe and watch. Number 3, Ultimate Deadpool. Ultimate Deadpool was a villain from Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe. He first appeared in Ultimate Spider-Man number 91 in 2006, where he was depicted as sadistic and downright evil. He kidnapped, hunted, and killed mutants on live television and referred to them as non-human animals. Ultimate Deadpool met his ultimate end in Deadpool Kills Deadpool in 2013 when he was stabbed through the back and chest by 616 Deadpool. Now, this isn't something that would normally kill a character with a healing factor, but as I discussed over on Comic Drake, not all all Deadpools are created equal. Ultimate Deadpool has a healing factor, but how it works is never really explained, and it doesn't heal his heavily disfigured face. So it seems to work differently than that of the Deadpool from Earth 616, whose face is disfigured in a totally different way. Not only does Deadpool's power set vary depending on who's writing, it also depends on which Deadpool is being written about. Ultimate Deadpool was arguably the second most prominent Deadpool to die in Deadpool Kills Deadpool. Who was the first? Well, that brings us to number 2, Dreadpool. So we just mentioned 2013's Deadpool Kills Deadpool, the series in which Earth 1610's Wadey Wilson, or Ultimate Deadpool, was killed. However, Ultimate Deadpool's death was only depicted in that one single panel, and Deadpool Kills Deadpool is just one installment in a 3-part story known as the Deadpool Killogy. So, side note, this evil version of Deadpool is usually called Dreadpool, a nickname given to him by writer Colin Bunn in an interview with Newsarama, but he's sometimes also referred to as Evil Deadpool. I've been guilty of calling him that in other videos myself. However, he is not to be confused with the previously discussed Evil Deadpool, who also shows up in Deadpool Kills Deadpool. To make matters even more confusing, some online sources erroneously attribute the name Dreadpool to both these versions. Looking at you, Comic Vine. So, for simplicity's sake, Evil Deadpool is the one that was an amalgam of body parts, and Dreadpool is the Deadpool that wants to kill all the Marvel heroes in every universe. So Dreadpool is an evil Deadpool, but not the evil Deadpool. Phew. So moving on, Dreadpool hailed from Earth 12101. He was admitted to an insane asylum where the supervillain Psycho Man was posing as a doctor. He attempted to mentally condition Wilson, but only succeeded in silencing his normal voices, leaving him with only one new voice in his head, illustrated by a red caption box. So Deadpool and the red box decided to kill every single superhero in the Marvel Universe. They then began to travel through the multiverse, killing more and more alternate versions of the Marvel Universe heroes, and then later on, the classic characters that inspired them. In the final installment, it's revealed that no matter how many are killed, continuity continues to reassert itself, and Evil Deadpool realizes that in order to end the multiverse, he must kill every version of Deadpool. Eventually, he recruits an army of like-minded versions of Deadpool branded as the Evil Deadpool Corps and leads them on a mission to rid the multiverse of all Deadpools, including themselves. And speaking of the Evil Deadpool Corps, number 1. Other various members of the Evil Deadpool Corps. So I'll be cheating a bit and dedicating the number 1 spot to the various other incarnations of Deadpool that were featured in Deadpool Kills Deadpool, but, you know, only the evil ones, because that's how we roll. The difference is that these versions of Deadpool were introduced without any backstory, so it won't be nearly as in-depth, but these guys deserve to be noticed. So here's a bunch of evil Deadpools for the price of one. Bondage Pool. Deadpool, but 50 shades darker. The Deadpool Watcher. He's not a Deadpool at all, but he wants to be one so bad, you guys. Don't crush his dream. Cowboy Deadpool. Yippee-ki-yay. Wolverine Deadpool. Wolverine hates Deadpool, so who hates this Deadpool? He probably hates himself. Weird mouth cover Deadpool. Can someone explain this to me? Is it a reference to something? I seriously don't know. Leave a comment and enlighten me. Galactus Pool. Deadpool, except he eats planets instead of chimichangas. Pass. Bearded Bees Pool. He was actually a spy for the good guys, but how can I exclude that beard? Shark Pool. He's like Deadpool, but he gets his own week on the Discovery Channel. Sorcerer Supreme Deadpool. He's Deadpool if he were constantly asking you to pick a card. Any card. The first rule of Deadpool Fight Club is no one lives long enough to talk about Deadpool Fight Club. I don't know which evil Deadpool is the Edward Norton of evil Deadpools, but I hope he's learned that the Brad Pitt Deadpool isn't real. Okay, guys, I know the number 1 was a little different this time, but what can I say? I thought it was fun. And also, I do what I want. Jump down to the comments section and let me know if you think I've lost my mind.
Last time I did 5 evil Supermen, I said Superman needs no introduction. And then I went on to run down the history of Superman for 2 minutes. You can check that video out, link in the upper right hand corner, but this time, let's just jump in. right after I tell you that this video was brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. You can support the channel at patreon.com/fancygeeks. Head over there and check out the rewards. Get a video made on a topic or character of your choice. Even a single dollar helps. And now, here are 5 more alternate versions of Superman you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. Unless you're into that sort of thing. No judgment. Number 5. Rebirth Lex Luthor. So, yesterday's YouTube short was a rundown of DC Rebirth, and that was no coincidence. You can watch it now if you missed it, again, card in the upper right-hand corner, but we're talking about the same Prime Earth. Now, we're going to gloss over a lot of this one because I really want you to read it, but there are multiple Supermen in this continuity, including a Superman who dies, a pre-Flashpoint Superman who landed here after the events of Convergence, along with his son John, who he is training to be Superboy, and his wife Lois. There's also an unexplained Clark Kent, and finally, Rebirth's version of Lex Luthor, among others, frankly. Alright, so Lex comes back from Apocalypse. That's where he was, don't worry about it. And finds Superman dead, so he buys the Daily Planet to get access to Superman's cape, as you do. He slaps the Superman crest onto his supersuit and takes up the mantle of Superman. Pre-Flashpoint Superman goes public. He has an immediate mistrust of Lex and his motives due to dealing with Luthor in his timeline. However, when Godslayer and Zed show up to punish Luthor for crimes he will commit in the future as the heir to Darkseid's throne on Apocalypse, Superman rescues him, and they work together to get back to Earth. Superman still distrusts him though, but will not allow him to be punished for things he has yet to do, and even argues that the interference of Godslayer and Zed may have very well changed Lex's future, and I'm going to stop right there because you guys really need to read this one. Lex and Supes have a lot of trust issues, and Lex eventually rips the Superman shield off his chest and operates as an independent hero, but you know comics, eventually a new story by a different writer comes along, and Lex ends up the leader of the Legion of Doom. So he wasn't evil while he was Superman, but I couldn't resist adding him to the list at number 5 so that people can drop into the comments section without watching the video and tell me how wrong I am.
It's a trap!
Number 4. Brutal. So Earth 2 is a universe where the 8 Wonders of the World, an alternate version of the Justice League, went to war with Steppenwolf and his parademons. Brutal was the leader of Darkseid's Hunger Dogs and defeated the New Wonders of the World, a superhero group that formed about 5 years after the war with Apocalypse, but let's back up for a second. So, Deron is a small European monarchy on Earth 2. The country aligned itself with Steppenwolf, military general, part of Darkseid's elite, and all-around bad mother box. Now, when Deron leader King Merove tried to double-cross his new ally, he was killed. So the New World Army launches an invasion of Deron, but before it can begin, Dr. Fate, Flash, and Green Lantern launch an attack in an attempt to soften up the country for the invasion, and perhaps influence the world's opinion on masked heroes using Alan Scott's global broadcasting network to spin the news. They hope they might even defeat Steppenwolf ahead of the invasion for maximum effect. Steppenwolf sends the Hunger Dogs to battle them. He actually says release the hounds, which I love so much. And after fighting only one outlying defense convoy, the heroes are about to engage a second wave when the Sandmen, Atom, and Red Arrow show up, leading a stealthy advance ahead of the invasion. They wipe out the second wave and turn their weapons on the unexpected heroes, creating a standoff. Sandman asks what the hell they think they're doing there, and just as the two groups come to an agreement on how to move forward, the Hunger Dogs show up and attack both the World Army's Wonders and the other 3 heroes. The battle is short and hectic. Unfortunately, it's also the defeat I mentioned earlier. That one guy from the Venture Brothers and Weird Skull Lady pull off a decisive victory, but they don't finish them, leaving Flash to later wonder why they're still alive. Spoiler, it's because Brutal thinks that they'll be useful to Darkseid, and dude from the Venture Brothers has mind control. Meanwhile, just 1 hour into the invasion, it's clear the World Army has lost. More than that, they are eviscerated. The New Wonders are eventually healed by Dr. Fate and assist in evacuating the remaining New World Army soldiers, except for one, Green Lantern, who goes straight for Steppenwolf. His attack barely gets underway when Brutal flies in and attacks him. Atom tries to help, but is quickly knocked out, and Green Lantern is beaten by both Steppenwolf and Brutal until he stops moving. That's when Steppenwolf sees a reporter and camera crew. He begins a speech. He orders the people of Earth to surrender or die. He further declares that the last time he went to war with the Earth, it was for Darkseid. This time, it was for him. And that's when Brutal literally splits him in half mid-sentence. The death of an immortal is so powerful that it leaves a huge scar across the planet and splits an entire continent, killing millions. He removes his armor, revealing himself to be Superman, and makes his intentions clear. Hail Darkseid. Little on the nose. The remaining Wonders and the rest of the World Army retreat, but Brutal comes after them, leading Dr. Fate to try and stop the mystery Superman with magic, one of his known weaknesses. But Brutal can hear everything they're saying with his super hearing and is outside waiting for Fate. He hits him into the ground, leaving a small crater, and stomps his helmet so hard it cracks. He's only saved when the Flash runs in and grabs him, running him to safety. Skipping ahead a bit, Batman breaks into the facility as it's being demolished by Brutal and rescues Val-Zod, among others, all stored in cryopods. He also shoots the Joker in the head, so yeah, different Batman. Val-Zod is Kryptonian, so I'm sure you can see where this is going. There's a lot going on toward the end, and you should read it for yourself, but Brutal's aim is to transport the whole Earth across space with a giant boom tube to become the new apocalypse. Val-Zod rips off his hoodie, revealing the crest of the House of El, explaining that Kal-El's parents took him in as a child. Meanwhile, a newly revived Green Lantern rescues the Flash from Brutal's stronghold, and in a spur-of-the-moment idea, leads a large portion of the Apocalypse forces, including Weird Skull Lady, into an attack from Aquawoman, though she does not care for that name. Flash then runs with Weird Skull Lady so fast that she disappears, apparently pushing her into infinity. During a weird hostage pretend dinner with Superman's parents and Lois Lane, who is Red Tornado in this universe, Brutal kills Pa Kent when he says, "Screw Darkseid." A mind-controlled Sloan and company finish the apparatus needed to transport Earth to its new location, and everyone converges on CERN, where the apparatus has been built from the Super Collider, except Green Lantern, who goes into space and uses his ring to hold the planet in place and buy time. Batman and company make a hole in a sea of parademons for the Flash, who carries Aquawoman through. She manipulates the water in Bedlam, the guy from the Venture Brothers' head, giving him a stroke. Once freed from mind control, Sloan and company shut down the boom tube. At this point, Brutal is fighting Val-Zod, but something is wrong. His powers are fading and his body seems to be breaking down. His skin is cracking and chipping away while his crest comes loose and turns around backwards. His mind is also going as he mutters,
"Me am Superman."
And that's when Lois uses her powers to reduce what's left of him to dust. The people of this universe may not recognize who this apparent clone of Superman is, but we do. This is Bizarro. The story, of course, goes on from there, but Brutal is our evil Superman number 4. Number 3, Parallax Superman. So Parallax in DC Comics is a sort of demonic parasite creature that's been around since the beginning of time. It's often called the living embodiment of fear and was imprisoned inside the Green Lantern's central battery. The Guardians called him the Yellow Impurity. When Rogue Lantern Corps member Sinestro was imprisoned inside the battery, his accordion yellow ring awoke Parallax's power. Now that's a very short version, and the truth is that Parallax was created by writer Ron Mars and artist Darryl Banks in Green Lantern Volume number 3, number 48, back in January of 1994, and was simply meant to be Hal Jordan's supervillain name. However, years later, 2004's Green Lantern Rebirth came along, and the point was to reset Green Lantern back to the previous status quo, so Parallax was explained to have been possessing Hal Jordan, and through the power of the almighty retcon, a yellow demonic parasitic creature was born. Let's just hope that he never possesses Superman.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Okay, so Superman is looking for some missing children. Not only has he promised their parents that he'll find them, but he's also afraid that John might be next. During his investigation, he finds some yellow radiation and begins to follow the trail. It leads him to Z, the first missing child, who seems to be leading another child away. "Your parents are very worried. Come with me so that I can help you," Superman says. Z's eyes turn yellow and energy streams from them.
"I don't want your help."
And he blasts Superman through a wall. Superman hits him with a quip worthy of Spider-Man and freezes the possessed young man in place. He walks a few steps forward, and that's when he hears the voice behind him.
"Superman, scared yet?"
It's a little girl behind him, eyes glowing yellow. She blasts him in the back with energy and then passes the power back to Z. Z starts to monologue.
"Love, hope, compassion,
You have to let in the fear.
Superman is blasted again. He wakes up sometime later to find out they got away. He flies up into the sky and looks for the yellow energy signal, the color of fear. He singles out the house the energy signal is coming from and rushes in, and a voice begins to speak.
You can hear them, can't you? Whimpering, crying for their mommies, praying for their fathers to rescue them. No one can save them, Superman. Not even you.
Superman's heart starts to race as the feeling of fear bubbles up in his stomach, not for himself, but for those that he might let down. He steps into the next room to find all the missing kids strung up in a web of yellow constructs. Z smiles, showing his many pointed teeth, and that's when it dawns on Superman. This isn't Sinestro. This is something worse. Parallax takes the form of a yellow giant monster and slaps Superman with a giant tentacle, sending him flying. He blasts the monster with his heat vision, but it's no good. Yellow tentacles wrap around him. His fear increases. Parallax can see it in his mind. Fear for his son John, fear for the safety of the children, fear on behalf of the entire city. As Parallax tries unsuccessfully to take Superman as his host, the Man of Steel makes an offer. Let the kids go and take him instead. And that's how Kal-El becomes Super Parallax, a nearly invincible terror with all the powers of Superman. No moral compass whatsoever, the power to make nearly indestructible yellow constructs, and the ability to detect and feed off of fear. The story goes on from there. Sinestro shows up, and there's a pretty epic battle. If you want the full story, then check out this video from my friends over at Comicstorian. Super Parallax ends up being just a cliffhanger for the next issue, so they don't really do a lot with him. I think this is a good story, and a lot of people really like it, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's not a great story. You see, this was the main Prime Superman, so all I could think reading it was that DC isn't going to make Superman from the main continuity into a bad guy. There would just be too much fallout. Now, if this was a different Superman, and as we've discussed before, Rebirth is full of them, or if this was an alternate reality, then it could have had bigger stakes. What if Parallax possessed Superman and he liked it? What if he became a villain? I want to see that story. This version of Super Parallax didn't get to do anything. That being said, it made the list for its potential. Super Parallax could be the most evil Superman ever, if he had the chance. Number 2, Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime has a neat backstory. He comes from a universe where all of the heroes are just fictional characters. This one dates back to the end of 1985 and hit stands in the November issue of DC Comic Presents number 87. Much like Superman, he was born on Krypton and his father was trying desperately to save the planet from imminent destruction, a massive solar flare. However, in this universe, it was a transportation device that Jor-El and his wife Lara were working on rather than a rocket. Still a toddler, Kal-El stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. Have we got room for a Tuvix joke? No? Okay. He rematerialized on Earth somewhere in New England, where Jerry and Naomi Kent found him while on a hiking trip. They decided to raise the child as their own, finders keepers I guess, and named him Clark after a famous comic book character who shares their last name.
Sometimes
Teased a bit for his name, he grew up without any superpowers but did form a small group of friends. Then one day in high school, he donned the suit of the hero he was named after for a beachside costume party. While walking the beach with his girlfriend, Clark notices that he can see Haley's comet, which shouldn't be visible to the naked eye for 6 more months. He remarks that it looks close enough to touch, and reaching up toward it, he begins to fly. And who does he find up there? Superman. And together they save the crowd below from an incoming tidal wave. So the newly declared Superboy follows Superman back to his reality, not realizing that he would never be able to return. Much of what happens next is way too complicated to explain here, but after the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, his home universe was gone, and he was trapped in a paradise dimension with Superman from Earth 2, as well as Alexander Luthor Jr. of Earth 3. From there, they watched the history of the new universe unfold. As time goes on, he becomes homesick and angry, and Luthor manipulates him into trying to bring about a perfect Earth. We're going to have to leave it there, but your boy goes power mad and becomes a murderous villain. He's involved in Infinite Crisis, Sinestro Corps War, where he first takes on the name Superman Prime, Countdown to Final Crisis, Legion of Three Worlds, Blackest Night, Rebirth, and Death Metal, and I think he murders people in all of them. Interestingly, in Final Crisis, Legion of Three Worlds, he's returned to Earth Prime, but everyone has read about him in comic books and knows he's a villain, and even his family is now afraid of him. And that brings us to our number 1 spot. Number 1. Dark Multiverse Superman. So, I think you guys know by now that I love Dark Knight's Metal. As part of my Into the Omniverse series, I once did a video called Superman Turns Evil, Batman Becomes Doomsday about Earth -1 and the Devastator. I think I'll add a link in the upper right hand corner in case you haven't seen it. In short, this one-shot series from Dark Knights saw a world where Superman went on a killing spree, and I'm going to leave this number 1 spot here because you can just watch that video right now. It is one of my very best videos. So just one more quick thank you to our wonderful patrons on Patreon. You can support the channel at patreon.com/fancygeeks and get a video made on a comic or character of your choice. If you can't afford Patreon, then you can still be a huge help by sharing this video on Twitter, Facebook, or Reddit, and you can come chat with me directly on Discord, link in the description below. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and until next time guys, be kind to each other. I'm Jay Parks.